goodness, it's a Monday in the 5 o'clock hour, and he's not a good friend, he's a great friend. He's one of us, Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach. Phil, was it 46, 44? How many years did you coach in college? I know 1 year in Irving in high school. Right?
I broke a couple of years off, but it was right at 44.
44 years.
44 seasons. So
a lot of great football players with the number 44 on their jersey. All right, so I'm going to start with this because A&M and Texas are playing. We had Pat Thomas on.
PT. That was my teammate.
Yep, and he told me one time, I don't know if we can believe him, but you can also confirm this, that he one time stood up Earl Campbell in the 75 game, and Ed Simonini then hit him and fumbled the ball, and he's a tough nose. As a defensive back, he would come up and smack you in the mouth.
PT was about 5'9", and he would mow you down. He had a cousin that was a safety named Jackie Williams that actually knocked Marty Akins out of that game.
Yeah, no, we brought that up, and Pat said he was a part of the tackle because UT fans thought it was a dirty hit. Obviously, he had some knee issues, but he mentioned it was Williams and that he was a part of that tackle, and that stopped the streak for A&M to win against them after a while, right?
It became the first game. We went there in 74, thought we could beat them, and it was 17-0 before we said, don't do it. And, in 75, we were good. We were actually better in 76. We went to Austin. I think I told you this. And it was Darryl Royal's last game. We beat them 27, I think, to 6. And so that's when A&M's run sort of started. You know, that group, I play golf, and I want you to meet him with Bubba Bean, who's a good friend of mine. And that group in 72 that Emory Ballard of African-American players that A&M started getting, it changed the trajectory of that series.
What was your favorite A&M Texas memory?
Paul, I think it was the memory of what I said in 76. We went over there. We were really a good team. We had lost to U of H early in sort of a close fluke game. We didn't have our quarterback settled. And then we go on a run, and I felt at the end of the year we were the best team in the country. Oklahoma won the national championship, but we had this George Woodard. We got defensively, we were outstanding. We played Florida. You know, back then there was only about 10 major bowls. We played Florida in the Sun Bowl, and really we thrashed them. And but the Texas game that year, as I said, they always, if you're losing, they start singing that poor Aggies, and they couldn't see it. They couldn't say it that day.
Coach, what's just the buzz like between all of the people that you know, all the former players, the people in college? I mean, I can't imagine. It's just once in a lifetime type of buzz.
One of the things, Craig, that's happened is that A&M and Texas have a great rivalry. I regardless of what people say, there's so much mutual respect. Two great universities, 80 miles apart, wonderful programs. And they haven't played for 11 years, and it's been somewhat political. And they should have kept playing regardless of what league they were in, because it was unfair to the fans that they didn't play. I always said the older generation, meaning me, we always thought, hey, regardless, we should play them. The younger generation thought that DeLoss was sticking his nose at us and saying we're better. It wouldn't have mattered. Just play, just like Pitt and West Virginia did. But I just think it's such a great rivalry game. We used to play it on Thursday, on Thanksgiving. And I wasn't going to go to the game, but so many of my friends and teammates, they said, you're going. And so a friend of mine has a box, and I'm going to go watch the game from his box.
I think they're doing you a good service as friends, because, I mean, that's going to be something unlike anything else we've seen in college football in quite some time to see that reignited. Now, as far as the teams rolling in here, Texas, outside of Georgia, is perfect. Quinn Ewers maybe a little bit banged up. It's kind of foggy on how healthy he is. But A&M, my goodness, 2 out of the last 3 losses at South Carolina, and then that humdinger on Saturday night. What'd you make of that loss to Auburn, and just kind of the way these two teams are entering on Saturday, or if that even matters?
I think both of them maybe had a little bit of a pre-big game jitters. I watched the Texas-Kentucky game. I didn't think they were real sharp either. I thought A&M made an unbelievable comeback. I thought they showed a lot of character and came so close to winning. And I think if they played 5 times, they would have beat Auburn 4. I think the matchup of the game is going to be really good because I think A&M has speed on defense. Texas does a lot of perimeter run stuff, so they'll match up well there. The key for A&M is to be able to play the vertical game that Ewing or whoever's the quarterback at that time is going to play. They struggled early in the game against Auburn defending the vertical pass game, and they're going to have to do a better job with that. And they're going to have to do the same thing. I think A&M can move the ball on Texas. I think Texas defense is good. I don't think it's dominating. I think a lot of their stats come from who they played. And I think Colin Klein can do some things that do some damage to them.
Do they know what they're doing with Marcel Reed? Obviously, there's been the back and forth with the quarterback play. I see explosiveness occasionally, and then I just see nothing for like 2 or 3 series.
Well, Smoke, he had 300 yards passing and 70 yards rushing with 1 tip ball turnover. Trust me, that game, he played well enough to win, in my opinion. I think he's dangerous, and I think he's going to get better and better and better. I don't think for a minute they would ever come back with playing the other quarterback.
Yeah.
That question, I think, and like anything else, I think that Colin is finding out daily what he can do and how well he can do it. And I really believe that this matchup, I think he can be a star on Saturday.
I take it back. You're right. I did not realize he had that many yards total offense on both passing and running the ball. It got kind of frenetic there at the end. But doesn't Texas have great speed on defense that will also match what Marcel Reed might be able to do?
I think Texas is athletic, and I say this again, and I'm not saying it because I'm an Aggie, but I don't think they've played a team that can do the things that A&M can do, even with A&M's best back out. I look at Texas against Kentucky, and if Kentucky doesn't turn the ball over, that's going to be a tight game. They ran the ball. They found creases. They threw the ball when they had to, when they put the other quarterback in, the freshman quarterback. Did you watch any of that game?
I did a little bit, yeah.
And they start torching Texas vertically down the field. This receiver, number 3 for A&M, has gotten better. I think that Walker, number 9, has gotten better. Now, last week, for some reason, their tight end wasn't involved in the pass game. But I really think this is a game that can be a really exciting football game.
I want to go back to the end of that Auburn game. Do you think that they got a little bit tight with their play calling there in overtime? They made a couple of, like that speed option to the short side of the field is fine when you need like 2 yards. When you need 6 or 7, you really are kind of playing into the advantage of the defense.
Well, Paul, what happened was that was a blitz check, and Auburn showed an all-out blitz, 0 blitz. And if Marcel made a mistake, which he did, he should have stayed with the call because it was a bluff, and they baited him into running the speed option, and Auburn did a good job of making a play. And that was, if you remember, that wasn't in overtime. That was after they got the turnover that could have been the biggest play. If they could have gone and scored there, it had never been in overtime.
Coach, I guess elsewhere, Baylor 5 wins in a row. Kansas 3 straight top 25 wins. Could have had 4 if they finished the job against Kansas State. It's setting up for a game that I don't think many people really felt much about, but now you got 2 teams that are really streaking. Your thoughts on the Bears getting a gritty win down in Houston and now setting themselves up for this showdown with KU?
First and foremost, I didn't think we played great at Houston and still won, which tells you that, tells you a story. They found a way. Our quarterback threw 3 picks, only threw for 200 yards. Our running back averaged 3.7 yards a carry, 28 carries. Our defense played good. We got 4 takeaways, found a way to win, which was exciting. I think without question, Craig, the 2 best teams that are playing right now in the Big 12 are going to play Saturday in Waco. I think that Lord knows if either one of them would have handled their business earlier, this could have been a huge, huge game, besides being a huge game for both of them now, but it could be very significant in the championship.
Phil, when you were there at your time at Baylor, obviously Oklahoma State was good. Oklahoma was good. You were good. And then West Virginia had their stretch too. And there were Kansas State where you coached at one point. TCU was really good. Is the conference now just basically almost like it was there, or were there better teams at the top during that time than you see now?
I think athletically we were better from top to bottom. I mean, you say it. You had us. The teams that were down, unfortunately, were Texas. Texas was down a little bit. Texas Tech, because of their offense, was dangerous with anybody they played.
Yep.
Which they are now. But you had, like you said, West Virginia was real. Kansas State was real. Kansas State played in the Fiesta Bowl. All those teams, Oklahoma played in the Sugar Bowl. Played for the national championship. We did. One of the things about the Big 12 and the SEC, anybody can beat anybody. I don't see any dominant team. And that's why I say earlier, Smoke, if you looked at it right now, Baylor and Kansas are playing better than anybody else in the even I think they're even better than Arizona State. I felt Arizona State has had some breaks, but I think if they played either one of these teams, I believe Kansas would beat them. I believe Baylor would beat them.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
And I believe that. Go ahead.
Okay, you're the coach at the end of the game. If Kenny Dillingham was locked in the closet and you had to make the decision, do you go score or do you try to run the clock out like he did?
I thought it was a mistake. And I think if he had it to do over, he would do it. I would try to score.
Yeah, good news. I think the thing with Dillingham, the good news is he's a second-year head coach.
Yeah.
So he's learning this, trial by fire, and he'll definitely be better for that. We were having this conversation, like there's all of these scenarios, all of these teams fighting for these spots because everybody's got 2 and 3 losses.
Right.
Do you like this, all of the mudslinging over who's better and this and that, or do you prefer it a little tighter where it's like, no, there's 4 and that's it, and if you're 5th, sorry for you? Which do you prefer, kind of seeing how this is playing out and all the craziness?
Craig, after the A&M game, I really thought A&M would win that game. I thought the last play that Colin called was a great football play. I hated that kid dropped the ball because he played so well. I get a call, and a friend of mine tells me, he goes, Bennett, do you realize that if we would have won that game, that regardless of the score of the Texas or who won, Texas or A&M, they would play again in the SEC championship. Did y'all know that?
I didn't know that exactly. Yeah.
If A&M would have won, Georgia would have been, by the way, their setup. That's what he told me, and I think it's right. And so, I think about this right now, Craig. It's a lot of flying parts. I mean, you see Indiana and their coach is saying, well, anybody can see that we belong. Well, you know what? I must not be anybody because I'm not sure. Right. I'm not sure. This is not a typical Ohio State team. They don't run the ball great. If they didn't have the quarterback from Kansas State, I doubt they would be there. So I think there's a lot of even teams. I don't know if it's the portal or what's going on, but there's a lot of teams that at the end, it's who's playing the best at the end. And I look at this and I said, can you have a 3-team lost team in the playoffs? I don't know. But if A&M wins and then they win the SEC championship, they're in.
Yep.
And they're going to be a 3-loss team. So there's a lot of I don't understand all of the different scenarios and the tiebreakers, but I do believe that it can be. This is what I do believe. It's a long answer. I think it could be exciting because I don't think the SEC, if they're better than the Big 12, it's not by much. You can't tell me that Colorado. I mean, watching this, you look at Oklahoma, SEC, Big 12 team, doing that to Alabama. I think there's a lot of teams in every league, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, and the SEC. Now, there might be more of them there that could win this thing.
By the way, a former Big 12 team that for about a decade was kind of like wandering in the wilderness is now leading the SEC at the top. Now, again, Texas took a big step up last year with that team.
Right.
How many times? I know that Dion and they got thumped. KU ran for 300+ yards against him. I like to listen to him and his post game. Now I know a lot of people think there's too much glitz and glamour and whatever else, but when I've listened to him, Phil, I hear some good stuff from him. As a former coach, do you hear him fundamentally getting better and better in how he handles the game?
I think the last 5 weeks, someone has gotten his ear and say, cut the drama. Talk about your players. Talk about your team. I like the last 5 weeks. I think the focus has been on what they're doing, their players, and I think they're playing well. And I will be the first to tell you, I didn't see this coming, but they have really done a good job. Now, I will tell you this, though, too. Kansas, with Neal, this quarterback, and Kansas defense, took them to the woodshed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. Jeff Grimes is coming for blood. so you better be ready. They had 552 yards on a defense that's been playing outstanding. Mm-hmm. And he, I've said this forever. A lot of time coaches get let go, and Dave probably made the right call, but I promise you, this guy can coach. I've known him since he was a GA. He can coach, and he will have them ready to play on Saturday.
I remember when he was hired by Aranda, when I reached out to you and asked you a little bit about him, and you knew him back then when he was younger and
yes,
kind of getting his feet wet, right? That he had that it factor.
He was Mike Sherman's offensive GA. He played it. I knew him because I had another kid that I'd coached that played at UTEP. I knew he played for Andy Reid. This guy's been around some great football guys, and he's a great guy. And it's unfortunate, but it's all worked out, and it's just part of it. Just shows you the chaos that happens in college football. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Well, Phil, I think a lot of people just don't look at situationally what's going on. Jeff Grimes, it wasn't working out here. They didn't have the personnel to run that offense anymore, and they weren't really recruiting the personnel really well that they needed for that offense. So they needed a change to recruit personnel that would come here and fit. So it wasn't. Look, they didn't play well, and so it was all these things together. But
Hey, Paul, he played well early.
Yeah.
They played well early.
Yeah.
They would light your ass up.
Yeah. But then, once some of the rules guys left, they just didn't have, especially along the lines, it just didn't have the same kind of guys. Yeah. So that's part of him. He's recruiting them. I mean, that's true. But sometimes it's like the whole confluence of events, because if you just took every coach out for their worst run, Bill Belichick would still be a defensive coordinator.
Absolutely. I mean, you go back to Virginia Tech with the coach up there. I mean, it took him 6 or 7 years to get it going, and then it went on for 20.
Yeah.
I just think this game with Kansas has a lot of ties in it. And I say this complimentary to both teams. Both coaching staffs and team have answered the bell. They stayed the course. And truly, if you're looking at the best two teams in the Big 12 right now, I know this. Anybody in the SEC, I don't care who it is. And I know Baylor didn't play particularly well last weekend, but nobody wants to play those guys right now.
Yeah, they're
Kansas.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the coaches on staff that's on the offensive side of the ball said that Houston was going to create some problems. I don't know if it was the coverage that Fritz came up with, or they knew they would have. They ran the ball well enough, but only 3.1 yards per carry, but
Right.
they still run it pretty well. And Sawyer, hey, I mean, you know, he's carried him. It was good to see the defense maybe get him. I saw a note from Snacks Johnson, was at Baylor, went to Arkansas, came back, and somebody said something about, hey, the defense picked up the slack, and he goes, we owe them some. Like the defense owes the offense a few of those.
I thought that is how the thing – I thought that was the best part of it is that defensively they had 4 takeaways, which they hadn't got, and when they needed to get stops, they did it. And listen, and people came out. You know, that was the largest crowd that U of H has had all year. And granted, Baylor had a lot of support. So, you know, I watched U of H just tear Kansas State up down there. Could not stop them. And that's the thing. That's the thing that I thought was really good with that.
All right, so how emotional is it in College Station this week?
You know, it's emotional. It's you know, a lot of people say this, and I say this very gingerly. You know, when I came, and I could have gone to Texas, and I came to A&M because I saw something happening with Emory Bellard, and I saw guys. There was a new vibe here. You know, they were letting more girls in, and things were, you know, starting to happen. I like the small town. You know, A&M has been looked at as Texas' little brother, and now it's the largest university, you know, in the country. And if you go the last, I don't know, you could do the math. Somebody told me if you go from 1975 on, I think it's almost 30. I mean, it's almost 50 years. I think it's pretty close in wins and losses.
Yeah, it has been close. And both have had a stretch. It was a 10 of 11-year stretch for A&M with, Jackie Sherrill and Slocum.
Right.
And then Mack had a good run against them, I think, from about the time he started to get really good
right.
In the 2000s, too.
I just think it's a game. You go back, you know, this crazy football. I tell people this. Y'all remember this? In 11, we played A&M. They had that great offensive line, great running backs. It was tied in the fourth quarter. Mike Sherman told me this later. He said, I told our coordinator, don't call another pass. And they dogged us. They, you know, ran it right down our throat. And then they won the game. And that year, Texas comes over, last game ever.
Yep.
Beats the Aggies on a field goal on a very controversial late hit that got them down there. And they're all full of piss and vinegar. And then they come to Waco the next week, and we beat them like they stole something. How about that?
Yeah. Oh, my God. I can tell you're excited about it, man. Hey, I love the fact that you went to A&M because they started to let girls in. That was the best part of it.
Hey, but I'll tell you this. My wife was a Sam Houston graduate. Now, my first wife was an A&M graduate, but I told her I made a lot of trips to Waco, Huntsville, and Austin. It was a road trip in the spring.
You're the best, man. Enjoy where you are in that suite, in the 110,000 or whatever. Texas has a little bit of what has always been, even when Mack started to struggle. They are on the road in big moments or games like this. They seem to play loose and easy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, they're definitely capable.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a feeling it's going to be one of those memorable games.
I hope so. I think it's just great the fact that we're talking about it and you get to go watch it. Phil, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
SMU ACC, Phil Bennett on A&M and Texas' team he's coached, Arizona State, is going to play, it looks like, for the Big 12 title. Another school that he was there when he was there, they were bad time for SMU and Phil. They're now playing for the ACC title. Kansas State still alive. Oklahoma just had a win against Alabama, and A&M and Texas coming up this weekend.